Ending the Stigma, A Path to Recovery. Hosted by Fredd Carroll and life coach Scott H. Silverman. A mental health awareness and addiction recovery podcast. Don't be ashamed of your story. It will inspire others. Okay, everybody, welcome back to Ending the Stigma, A Path to Recovery with Scott H. Silverman and myself, Fredd Carroll. We haven't been on in a few weeks together. You were at a wedding, a beautiful wedding that looked very expensive, like a very expensive wedding. And
well, I was just a guest.
Yeah, well, I was thinking, I'm looking at your lovely family, your two beautiful daughters, and I'm thinking, oh, Scott's gonna go broke one day. These girls are gonna break the bank.
Yeah, well, that's why we're not putting a second on our home until the time is right.
Yeah, you really do. Both your daughters are beautiful women, as well as your wife.
Thanks. And they all get that from her, so we're really blessed that way.
Well, and I tend to agree, but that's okay.
Yeah,
they do. Actually, one of them specifically, I get them confused, which one's which when I'm looking at them. But one of them really has your wife. Almost, I would say 90%. It's almost like you could tell what she's going to look like at your wife's age now, and almost an exact. I think is it the younger one?
They both have blue eyes, which, but the younger one's eyes are a little bit bluer, and she's probably a little more. Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell because over time, when you change your hair and girls can do that, guys, I can't. I guess I could do it too. Start putting some black stuff in my hair, but I figure I've earned every one of these gray ones.
Yeah, I get stuck on that too. Riley wants to dye my goatee hair, and
that would be, And by the way, just so you know, and because the logo shows that orange is my favorite color, so if you go with orange, let me know, and maybe I'll do it too. It'll be kind of fun. We'll wear orange goatees for a show or two.
Yeah, I don't think I'd look good in orange. I don't think my day job would appreciate it either.
Well, that's true. You don't work for the orange place, or do you work for the orange place?
No, I work for the blue.
The blue one, yeah. Well,
blue.
Blue is my wife's favorite color. I could go with blue.
Yeah, so we'll figure something out. So what else have you been up to, besides how was the wedding, first of all, the travel and stuff? Was that
it's interesting because it's the first time I've been out of the house in probably 2 years. And it was, and so it's a 10-hour drive from San Diego to go to Lake Tahoe. And Lake Tahoe is, there was a lot of stress a couple of weeks before the wedding, simply because of all the fires going on and the smoke that was taking place and the ash that was dropping. But Lake Tahoe was at about 6,400 feet, so the air is kind of thin. All that meant was I had a good excuse for not going for long hikes, but it was gorgeous up there. And, we rented a little Airbnb. So we had a place we all hung out at rather than going to a hotel. And we were with my wife's extended family, her sister, and it was their middle child getting married, Andrew and Christina. And it was just great. It was a great setting. It was, I don't know, maybe 150 people throughout the couple of days that we had the events, and we walked and we did actually hike and we ate well, and it was fun. It's a long drive though, that 10-hour drive. And I drove the whole thing up and the whole thing back. I still feel like I'm recovering from that brutal drive, but it was a great time. It was good to get away. Fred, you don't think about getting out of your comfort zone until you get out of your comfort zone. And sometimes your comfort zone can be like your cave. And it was really nice to breathe. Sleeping was different. We were on this bed that felt like we were on clay, one of those, memory foam beds, but it was a great time. We had just being together was nice, and the phone wasn't really ringing much. And I have a great guy working with me, Jay, and he took care of everything down here. My wife was, had some activity, but it was nice. The only thing that was interesting is we were still wearing masks because that's what we do. And the second night we had this, like where the friends from out of town gather, and I got filleted for the server. They were having taco night, which was, to me, yay. I love tacos. So the server brings over the chips, and the server didn't have a mask on. So, I had my mask on, so I took my mask off and I went to grab a chip. And one of my kids came over and knocked the friggin' chip out of my hand going, "You can't eat that." "What do you mean I can't eat that?" "Well, the server didn't have a mask on. We don't know. Could be impacted with some sort of, COVID virus." And I said, "Are you kidding me? What are we going to do about dinner?" "No, we can't eat the food." And I got so upset about it. I had like a little mini temper tantrum and then just took a 300-yard walk so I wouldn't blow up in front of everybody, and had a chance to kind of, go within myself and go, "What's wrong with you?" So that was kind of interesting. But, I settled down and we ended up making dinner at the house, and it was cool. We had spaghetti and gluten-free pasta and pizza and a salad. But, so it's the little things. And, we went up to Incline Village and went into the Hyatt, and a buddy of mine used to work for the Hyatt. And coincidentally, we spoke about 2 weeks before I left, and he goes, "Don't go up there, man. That's for high rollers. You lose money." Anyway, so we're on this goofy slot machine, and my daughter puts in $20, and we won like $500. So it was that was fun, and it was her touching the money, not me. So I kind of enjoyed the gambling without getting too close to it. But it was a great trip overall. It was nice to get away. And I felt like when I came home, everything was handled. So it's not like I had to, jump in and play catch up. So that was kind of fun.
So moving forward, since it kind of ties in with it, with the question I'm going to ask is, with your daughters now being older, is it still the same traveling with them? I mean, are they attached to their social media? Because we had mentioned we were going to talk about social media today. Are they very attached to it?
Everybody was kind of on their phone listening to music, but it's interesting. About half that ride, you kind of lose cell service. So we stopped at a place called Harris Ranch. We had breakfast on the way up, which was kind of cool. And because we're out of town, pancakes, waffles, French toast, eggs, bacon, hash browns. It was kind of a big meal. But they did pretty good. And we really talked about how let's spend as much family time together as we can, because we don't always get to do this. All of us, the four of us, our nuclear family, get together. So they were pretty good about it. And, and when we were on it too long, they called us out as well. So, because it was really good to put the phones down. I mean, we're always attached, and, the conversations just last 48 hours, watching what's going on with the whistleblower from Facebook and talking about, what's happening with Instagram and the addiction issues and the driving of the young people to, obsess and, and something I never really thought about. Well, I thought about it, but I don't think about it, because when I think about things that people are addicted to, there's so many different things on the list. Social media is on the list. I've talked about it a few times, but listening to the kind of bullying that goes on with young people, where during the day, an event will take place at school. And then what happens is, if you're the subject of that, bullying, when you get home and you go on Instagram, for example, or some other social media platform, TikTok, something else, the bullying continues. And then you're isolated at home trying to process it. So some of the numbers that came out yesterday from the testimony were just scary, that the impact that, Instagram messaging is taking place, because it's a platform for people to say whatever they want, hide behind their screen. And literally yesterday and the day before, I've been in this kind of arm wrestling match with this guy on Nextdoor. I put out an article that was in the San Francisco Weekly, a digital article that was written with me and for me, and talking about marijuana. And this guy says, "I've smoked marijuana my whole life and I don't have a memory problem." And I asked the question, "How do you know?" And he just started to fillet me and said, "As a crisis coach, you should be a little more sensitive and not making claims that you can't support." And I said, then I went through my whole litany of where the data comes from. And I said, "Have you checked it out? There are people in Colorado that are taking 80% marijuana and edibles, and they're delusional, and they're jumping off roofs. There's been many suicides behind marijuana because people think they're an eagle and they can fly, or they can jump off of a building and it'll be okay." And all I was trying to say is, my marijuana, and this guy sounded like, he may have smoked the same thing. I said, "You want to do it, but be informed." And we went back and forth quite a bit yesterday. And other people were going, "Hey, you two need to really knock it off." So I basically said, "Look, you want to talk offline? Here's my phone number. Here's my email. And then he said, what for? So I kind of knew then that he's attention seeking, and wanted to be right. And that's okay. It kind of pissed me off, because that kind of information getting into the hands of young people who want to justify what they're doing, it's fine. It's not fine. We're seeing the overdoses with young people with things in marijuana. So I talk about what I talk about. I'm pretty comfortable with my data, and I know where it comes from. It's evidence-based, the CDC, the Surgeon General, the studies, the medical examiner, the task force I'm on, law enforcement, criminal justice. So it's not like I've got one little bucket that I gather information from, and I just, try to share what I can. But it was interesting, the controversy something like that would stir with adults. So, if adults are reacting that way, kids are probably not reacting, except with their contemporaries. And they're just saying, look, you guys did it, so we're going to do it. Okay.
Yeah. I'm afraid, though, they're trying to bury Zuckerberg here. Yeah. And the one thing I can't ever understand is people going on Facebook to post a post burying Zuckerberg. It kind of defeats my theory, just like everything else, is if you don't like it, don't use it. Get rid of the app. Just get rid of the app. That's going to hurt them more than your post is getting rid of it, because it's all about advertisements and money now. That's the whole thing. Even advertising itself. I do a lot of advertising on Facebook, or did, and I don't see the benefit to it anymore at the dollar amount I'm dealing with. I'm dealing with hundreds. But when someone like Nike could jump 10 grand an hour into a ad, you see their numbers are much more suitable to the need. But right. I'm afraid it's going to become another thing like the Al Gore's wife, Tipper Gore's campaign against music, going against the internet and stuff is, well, if you don't like it, turn the station. If you don't like it, don't listen to it. If you don't like it, and you're going to lose. There's too many flip sides to the argument. That is it an addiction, or is it if it is an addiction, whose problem is that? Is that the person addicted to it, or is it the person providing it? Because there's alcohol out there doesn't mean you're addicted to alcohol just because it's out there.
Well, it's kind of like blaming Jack Daniels or Budweiser for all the DUIs. Right. Kind of like, we did with OxyContin, with the opioid overdoses. And, even if the internet as we know it were to shut down, the dark web's not going to go away, because that's globally being done by a variety of different people. And, there's some major influencers there that have nothing to do. And, you said it earlier, Facebook, Instagram, and I don't know what the other one was, that just shut down yesterday. I'm not quite sure how that took place, but, Facebook is $1 trillion company. My sense would be that, they've already have 40 attorneys on this, sorting out all the comments, and they're already flushing out. And it was interesting because I think Facebook actually had to go on Twitter yesterday to make comments, because for some reason, that platform just got shut down. And I don't know who flipped that switch, or how that switch got flipped, or it was just strategic to draw attention to it because the whole world knew about it.
Yeah, there is I love these strategies that they use in marketing campaigns and stuff. I just love marketing. And sometimes negative marketing could be reversed with a simple dog bark.
Right.
But no, I don't know if he purposely did that yesterday to change the news cycle, or he did it, or it truly was a shutdown. But for something that big to have a shutdown like that, it's not easy to just shut that switch. It's not a switch, like you said. Their infrastructure is so big to handle worldwide traffic that it made no sense. But
and what's fascinating is there's another story. I don't know if you've caught it in the last couple of days, about billionaires who are working together to try to get their money invested globally and maximize their ROI and divert, I assume, paying taxes. And that was a very interesting story. And I think that's going to really start to show some very interesting outcomes when people start to realize where, some of these major, powerful global influence. I think they talked about Russia and, other people getting involved with what's going on globally to maximize their ROI. And that to me is fascinating because, I remember a story 50 years ago, and I'm 67 now, where my dad was telling me about this book that had come out where there's going to be a time where 8 corporations basically run the world. And, I think there's going to be some very fascinating information coming out from where some of these billionaires have put their money. And because, imagine when they're sitting around strategizing, I only have 2 billion. I want to get to 6 billion. What strategy do I use? And if I get to 6 billion, how do I bury my tax exposure on the 4 billion gain that I want to see happen in the next 6 months to a year? So when that comes out, I think that's going to be very, very interesting to see how some of the major players of the planet are actually working together to maintain their own self-wealth.
Yeah. And that's an addiction in itself. Getting wealthier is an addiction for at those levels you're talking, because really they never technically get to enjoy that money as much as you think. They get to, all they're doing is thinking about making more money. How do I turn this into more? And it becomes gambling. In a sense, it's an addiction. So if they don't hit their mark, their mental health fails, all these things happen. Addiction probably becomes of other sorts get tied into this. It's
and I spoke to a guy yesterday that I'm going to have on my podcast in a couple of weeks about risk and reward about life. And his theory is pretty interesting, and he studied it for decades. So guys my age, I'm looking forward to talking with him about it, because there are things that we do to move our agenda forward. But I think the way things have changed in the last 20 years, is really contributing to some significant potholes, if you will, on the route. So I like to stay informed, and I want to, I like to believe I'm teachable. So I'm really anxious to hear what that looks like. But, I would hate to think that there are 8 people traveling around in this great big jet, and they're planning what they think is important for the rest of the world. But there are rumors that could be true, and we're going to have to learn how to, not only practice our own self-care, but be informed so we can make the most intelligent decisions we can for ourselves and our family, our loved ones, and the people that we care about.
Yeah, it's going to be a difficult fight because there's so much money being made off of social media, from a job perspective all the way down. And it's not ending. But talking about that, I wanted to mention to you about a new app that some football players, and we had talked about this earlier, and you said there's other apps like this out. But I think what I like about this one is these are Terrell Owens is behind this, who was a very famous football player for San Francisco, Dallas and San Francisco he played for, something like that, in the Eagles or something like that.
Well, I can't help you with that, so I'm going to have to just trust you.
But he's behind, he's been on social on the talk shows and stuff, talking about his mental health, and specifically of color. But it's a stigma-free zone where it's a peer group where you could start groups for specific ailments that you're having issues with, and then within those groups try to solve your problems together. So it's kind of like I'm assuming there's an anonymity involved in it if you choose, where you don't have to give your name and all that. But I thought it was interesting because I think like you said, there's other ones out there. But to see people of status starting these things makes a difference, because that is the power of fame, is people follow. And if you're leading a good example, maybe they'll follow that example. And someone like Terrell Owens, who suffered through his career with mental health issues, now is saying, I'm creating this platform for men to come and talk. So I think it's a positive one way or the other. Whether it works or not, I don't know. But the positivity behind it is what I enjoy to see.
Well, and he's clearly a major influencer. So, someone like that puts out the kind of, the right kind of public relations and media, he'll get a ton of followers very quickly. And, I can remember, gosh, it was probably 10 years ago, working with a group before I got into the treatment business that actually developed this app. And it was, that's where I first kind of heard about gamification, where you do certain things within the app and then you raise your opportunity to get into different chat rooms and be able to talk with other people. And then each day you check in and you have like an emotional scoring where how you feeling? Are you green, blue, purple? You know, that's an example of it. And then you kind of check in, but it's, you know, to have that kind of mechanism. I mean, if social media is going to control so much, or we're going to be invested emotionally so much in what goes on, to your point, why not have something positive that people can actually not only gain from, but also, you know, symbiotically connect with people who are going through what they're going through and then talk about it. And then, of course, if somebody famous is there and they go, hey, thanks for checking in. You know, this is so-and-so. I'm the lead guitarist for such and such. You know, I know what you're talking about. You know, let's find ways to help each other. So I'm excited about that kind of opportunity.
Yeah, I think it's got a possibility there. And because of their fame, like you said, I was even unaware there was others out there like that. But that might be the catalyst and the reason why, because they don't have somebody famous backing them.
Right.
That can go, that is wanted on ESPN to talk about this for 30 seconds or a minute and stuff. But I think the celebrity, for all the times they get shit on, being too Hollywood and stuff, they do have a power still. There's still a power there between movie making, music making, all those things. Even when it's sad music and stuff, there's still a story being told. And usually it has a arc to it to where the person's alive. But I wanted to ask you something like, what's the negative impact or assumed negative impact to someone like a Keith Richards, for instance? Someone we know that has used multiple drugs for a long, long period of time and is still jumping around on stage. Does that create a negative impact to show that maybe it's not as quote unquote as dangerous as people claim, or is he just lucky?
Well, I think it depends on their positioning with it. You know, if somebody is saying, hey, you know, I just was sharing, you know, with this guy that I was with on next door talking about how they're doing, you know, they're smoking every day and everything's fine for them. And I'm saying, well, okay, but there are some people that are predisposed. And if they're younger, you know, the science shows that marijuana will impair the developmental side of the brain. So if somebody is under 25 and they're not fully developed, there's an impact they can have from that use. So it really depends on the positioning that they're talking about. Because when you look at, you know, it used to be television was one of the biggest sources. Now there's so much going on with social media. You know, you can read something, a blog can come out, someone can set up some chatter or just send out a message. I mean, you remember what's her name with the yogurt thing and the California sober, and I don't mention her name because I was talking to somebody yesterday and they said, you talk about her a lot. I said, well, it's just an example of a major influencer who could really have a positive impact. I mean, Robert Downey Jr., you know, we've talked about him, who, you know, used to joke about how every time he did cocaine, he broke out in handcuffs. And, you know, he was a star who did a ton of cocaine, ended up in prison and got out. And he's been one of the most successful, I think, celebrities to change his ways, got sober, got clean, had a family, and continues to give back in the community in a very big way. So, you know, those kind of influencers, if they've got the right message and their heart's in the right place, I mean, they can help create systemic change. There's no doubt about it, because we're certainly not going to listen to the government, you know, and we're not going to listen to the local municipality, and we're not going to listen to the drug companies. I mean, some people do, but, you know, there are a lot of people now that just, you know, they don't know which way to go. So they just do what they think is important for themselves to feel better. And that's the problem. That kind of self-medication, whether it's through this, that, or that, you know, is what you and I talk about. And that's the stigma part, meaning if what you're doing isn't moving your agenda forward, why would you keep doing that? But when you ask that question of people that are in the middle of it, they're like, it's none of your concern. This is my life. This is my body. I'm going to do whatever I want to do. Okay.
I think Robert Downey Jr., and this is all an assumption, but I think he did something similar to what keeps you sober, and that is a good woman. I think he found the right wife that is so supportive of him after the fact and didn't put up with it and kept him responsible for his actions. And she changed him, but I think that has a lot to do with, I think your wife played an important role in you.
Well,
Would you agree?
there's no doubt that when you're suffering from something, if someone close to you that you care about and cares about you supports you through your journey, it's a lot easier. But when you think about it, it's the same thing with a triathlete, having family that supports you, gets behind you, they're there on race day. They're empathetic with your regime of working so hard to get there. Having that kind of backup and that support, to me, being tethered to someone like that is incredible. So you're right. And in my case, I'm very lucky. And Michelle and I are going to be celebrating 40 years in the first part of next year. And with my history and my knuckleheadism, I'm really grateful. I mean, and there's days that she's in the room breathing, which just irritates me, but I wouldn't be alive without her. There's no doubt about it. And you're right. So, whether she's the reason he's still alive or she contributed to his supporting him while he went on the path of recovery, either way, she's certainly going to get a lot of credit for it. And I'm sure if we asked him directly, which would be nice one day if you could, Fred, get him on the show.
Yeah.
And let's talk to Robert Downey Jr. and ask him, how important was your wife? And obviously having children and being a father and being a contributing member to society versus one that maybe takes away. And I knew people that knew him while he was in prison that worked for the prison system. And, he was making his amends really early on. And he obviously, who was just, Chris just said, from inmate to Iron Man, so he certainly made some big changes and he continues to make them. And I know I heard rumors he's doing something huge right now to work with ex-offenders, veterans, I should say, who maybe were ex-offenders and helping them get back on their feet. So I haven't heard if it's a fact or not, but I heard some rumors. So, and someone like that, again, a major influencer like that, and I'd love to see him get out there more publicly, because I think anything that he would say, most people would automatically just embrace and go, well, I believe him.
Yeah, he's definitely somebody that has been forgiven. And that's probably an important part of it too, is letting the public just making the apology and being accepted for the mistakes you made.
Agreed.
But getting back to your wife, because you mentioned something about her breathing. I'm sure if we got her on the podcast, this is an unfair advantage. We could probably spend an hour with the things you drive her crazy with. I'm sure.
Well, my list is probably 47 times longer than hers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe next week I'll bring her on and I'll let you interview her.
Yeah, that'll be a fun. Oh, we'd have a blast with that.
We can do that. I'm going to have her on my podcast. I've been asking her. It's almost a year now, so I have been off air for a couple of weeks and firing things back up again with Michael, and we're going to start again on the 16th of October recording again. But I definitely want to get her, and I'd like to get my girls on. My girls never saw me under the influence, but they certainly have experienced my own recovery and been part of it and have been very supportive. So having that kind of family support is critical.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
And I just rebooted my show. My show started yesterday. Not Within the Head of Fred, my other one, which is called The Head of Fred Show.
Head of Fred.
The Head of Fred. That began yesterday, and that's just me alone yesterday. And next week I happen to have Jesse Cove on, who's from Cobra Kai. And me and you, luckily, are going to be interviewing his sister tomorrow for next week's show. And she is Rachel Cove, and they are twins. And they're also the children of Martin Cove, the actor from Karate Kid. So they are, two of them are in Karate Kid, but Rachel happens to own and operate. She's the CEO of Transformation. What's the name of that?
Solutions, I think.
She is the entrepreneur. Rachel Cove is Transformational Solutions out of Los Angeles. It's a trauma-informed life coaching company that helps provide people with sustainable solutions to self-destructive habits and to ultimately find their true purpose. And she's also an author that wrote The Mountain Method. And she's going to join you and I tomorrow for an interview that's not going to be live because she couldn't fit it into a Tuesday. And I think it'll be a good one. I think we always do a good job. And
Yeah, and how much longer can we talk to each other?
well, we could probably do this we could talk to each other every week because we're a good team.
I know, but I want to build that audience. I want to get to the point where Downey's calling us going, "Hey, guys, I'm ready for you." And okay. All right, Robert, we'd love to have you on. Somebody out there listening may know him and want to do it. So, I want to, one of my goals going into the new year is to really raise the bar, really reduce stigma, really get people to reach out, ask for help, make phone calls, call the hotline, and make it a year of creating change in a really positive way. And based on everything else we got going on, I don't think we can do anything but improve it.
Yeah, and I think if you look at our audio numbers versus our video numbers, our audio numbers are great. We do great on Apple and Spotify. So anybody that wants to hear shows that they have missed or anything, they could go over to Apple and type in Ending the Stigma. They could also go to venomstudios.com. That's VENOMSTUDIOZ. It's spelled at the top there, studios with a Z. And the podcast is available there with the links to the Apple, Spotify, Google, all the ones that are available. But I think it's definitely, listen, people love mental health, self-help, if you want to call it that. If we're being, we're at least being helpful by talking about it and giving a forum for people to talk about it. We're not doctors. We're not licensed. We just have information because you're so involved in it, and I'm just riding your coattails, right? Is that what you old people say? Coattails? Riding your coattails?
That might have been a generation before me, but I understand what you mean. And people will ask, and they'll go to their grandpa and grandma. And anyway, oh look, Charles is here, the entrepreneur. Anyway, Charles is an old colleague of mine, and we're doing some stuff together here locally very soon. And it's nice to see you on board, Charles. For God's sakes, getting out of your stuff. He's an author as well, so there's a new guest. But I think to your point, we just have so many problems that we need to manage, that we're sharing ours with others, and others hopefully will be empathetic and go, that happened to me, or now I recognize that it is okay to put my hand up and ask for help. Gosh, if we get one person to do that every time we do this, Fred, that is systemic change. And as the audience builds, and you and I get overwhelmed with phone calls, which I cannot wait to see happen. It'll be personally just a real thrill.
Yeah, and fortunately for us, of course, the pandemic caused a lot of people to go into the podcasting arena because it seems easy. You could do it with your cell phone technically. But now that they're all going back to work, they're realizing, wait, I don't have time to podcast. So a lot of them are going away. So millions came and arrived. The average podcast, from my statistics, lasts about 7 episodes. That's the average of the millions and millions of them. Because once you hit 7, you realize, wait, I'm not funny. 2, I don't have quality. 3, I don't have time. I'm getting no guests. And that's why getting guests is so, there's an art form to getting guests. So obviously when I got Jesse Cove, I was aiming for Martin Cove. Okay. I was aiming for Martin Cove, but Jesse happens to be on the show also. And he has the same agent as his father. So he said, listen, Martin's doing Dancing with the Stars right now. He's not available for podcasts, but I can give you Jesse. Now, talking to Jesse, he mentioned his twin sister in her work with mental health and stuff. And I just said, this is just a godsend, because this fills both our roles. I mean, there's a value in marketing to having somebody with a name. Well, and that's what we were talking about between the app with Terrell Owens and Robert Downey Jr. saying stuff. When there's a name attached to it, it makes a difference in the marketability. And that's a good and a bad thing, because it shouldn't be that way, but that's the world we live in. You got to have a name attached to it. And that's why I have a Scott H. Silverman on my show, because I need you attached to me. And then
there you go.
we're a perfect team. But
Well,
I think
that justifies the huge salary that you dispense to me every month. There's no doubt
right.
about it.
And I want to say for my mental health that in about 30 minutes, 32 minutes, my Boston Red Sox are playing my long hated rival, the New York Yankees. And I want to wish them nothing but luck. I got my Red Sox yellow jersey on, Red Sox hat, got my hat back there, got other hats all around the room. I need this, Scott.
Well,
I
maybe
deserve
to
this.
honor you, what I'll do is I'm pretty confident I'm sure it'll be a nationally televised game. I will find that game and I will watch it knowing that you're not in the stands, but you're screaming and yelling, and hopefully you'll have a voice left for tomorrow's segment.
Yes, and it is on ESPN, so it's a national game. So that's going to be it, though, Scott. Are you
Okay, man.
satisfied with our conversation today?
I am more sober than I was when we started. You bet.
Okay, well, good. So this is Ending the Stigma. Make sure everybody out there is checking us out on all social media, even though we just talked about social media being a bad thing. Let's make it a good thing and use it to find us. You could actually contact Scott H. Silverman if you have any issues, and you could find him at 619-993-2738. He responds to
Call me.
all calls within 24 hours. He tries, right? Within the
Absolutely.
24 hour. Of course, depends on the amount of time. You still have
If
your own life.
if you don't hear from me in 24 hours, then you've left information on the wrong voicemail.
Right.
Because I get back to everybody, and I look forward to it. Because to me, if we can do something together to help you or your loved one get pointed in the right direction, help them navigate, and help save a life, I mean, that's why I'm here on the planet today, and I do that every day. So don't hesitate. Call or text me, Google me, email me. Let's rock and roll with it.
Yeah. So make sure that's going. And how do we end the show, Scott? How do you end it?
Well, the way I like to end it is, if nobody has told you they love you today, Fred and I love you today.
Yeah, we love you. Absolutely. So make sure if you have any issues, Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 1-800-273-TALK 8255. Available. If you can't get a hold of them, you could always try 211. And if it's a real emergency, definitely use 911. So I am Fredd Carroll, and that is Scott H. Silverman. This is Ending the Stigma, A Path to Recovery, and we will see you again next week. Have a great day. Goodbye. Go Red Sox.